Hey, this is Joshua, and welcome to Storytelling Style 4. If you're not familiar with the storytelling styles of the story weaving, then I want you to go check out the story weaving website, maybe after this video, and you can see more about what story weaving is. The storytelling style 4 equates to the Enneagram type 4. So we're taking the Enneagram type 4. If you know you're a type 4, then this video applies to you. If you don't know your type, you can go to the Story Weaving website and find your type by taking the storytelling style quiz. Okay, so there are 9 different types, 9 different storytelling styles. They're commonly called personality types in the Enneagram system, but uh, really what they are is 9 different ego fixations. So most personality typing systems are there to tell you who you are, but the Enneagram system is a very ancient system. It's designed to tell you who you're not, but who you think you are. It tells you, here's the box you put yourself in, here are the limits that you think are real, and here's what's actually not true, so you can step out of that fixation and free yourself of these unnecessary confines, right? So once you know your type, your storytelling style, it becomes very interesting as a storyteller because the fundamental polarity of your storytelling style drives all of your stories. So some of your characters, let's say you're writing a screenplay, some of your characters in the story may be, type 1, a type 7, type 8. But so while they have their own tensions emerging from them as characters, your overall story is based on your own tension, of your own personality fixation. So knowing what that is really helpful so that you can go through a transformational process while you are creating the story, and then therefore your audience will be going through a transformational process also. By virtue of your transforming, they are transforming. That's the premise of story weaving. That's what story weaving is about. So I'm going to go now more into specifically type 4. So if you know your type, if you're a type 4 already, this is going to be helpful for you. If you don't know your type, or maybe you know somebody who's a type 4, this will be helpful for them. If you don't know your type, this video probably won't make a whole lot of sense to you unless it is that you're looking to find your type, and maybe you can identify yourself here or not. Okay, so the fundamental polarity driving the storytelling style of the type 4 is bewilderment versus common sense. So it's the tension between being pulled into one direction or the other. And so an imbalance is created. You can see how these are very different. Bewilderment versus common sense. And so as these two seemingly opposite polarities, as these two become collapsed into one another, and the emotional charge that has created them, that makes them appear so separate, as that collapses, the type 4 transforms. And so whether the type 4 realizes it or not, hopefully you realize it after watching this video, your storytelling is for the collapsing of those polarities and the unification of those energies into one, so that it's neutralizing the emotional charge. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the type 4 specifically, because it's helpful to be able to understand how all this, how everything gets set up in the type 4's ego fixation, so that you can have a well-rounded understanding of that, what that looks like, what that tension getting resolved actually means. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit from a few books. The first one I'm going to read from is 9 Lenses on the World. So a couple of important things here just to get us started. The idealized self-image of the 4. The distorting paradigm of the 4 gets crystallized around the self-image of I am special, I am sensitive, I adhere to elite standards. Right? So that's who the 4 thinks that they are. It's not actually true, because we don't need to be that specific, right? The small self, the ego fixation, demands specificity, demands control, and to know, who am I, right? I am special, I am sensitive, I adhere to elite standards. But what if everybody has the capacity for that? You know, everybody has all types within them, but the 4 fixates on this is me, and that actually has negative consequences. And you can, as I talk, as I read these things, you can find out, or you can ask for yourself, how does this relate to this polarity of bewilderment versus common sense? So, you know, if the 4 thinks it's common sense to, what did I say? It's common sense to adhere to elite standards. And if I see other people not doing that, I'm bewildered, right? And so it throws them back and forth, and then the 4 is never satisfied, because there is no solution. When we identify the polarity of the tension, the fundamental polarity of a type, it's always this unsolvable problem, back and forth. There is no solution. That's actually the beauty of this whole thing. There is no solution to the problem of the ego. There is no solution to the fixation. All there is unclutching and deciding, this is not my business. This is not a problem I need to solve. You know, the fixation of what appears to be the problem, it doesn't need to be a problem. It's all it is a fixation. So I'll read a little bit here. Maladaptive schema, by the way. This mentions, you know, the schema is like the configuration of the ego. Maladaptive one means dysfunctional. So we maintain our maladaptive schemas by highlighting evidence that confirm them and discrediting data that disconfirms them, also called confirmation bias. The 4, any type, will search for evidence that their configuration is correct, and will search for evidence that any other information, any other configuration is incorrect. And that's what everybody does to protect the integrity of the ego. You know, not a good integrity, but to protect the beliefs that are most comfortable. 4s sustain their maladaptive schemas by scanning their environment for signs of being unwanted and unwelcome, looking for indications of inattention and boredom. And then the author says here, I recall a 4 getting upset and taking it as proof I didn't want to be with him any longer when I glanced at the clock during a consulting hour to see how much time we had left. After exploring his feelings of being boring and unwanted, I commented that he registered as significant the 1 second I looked away, and relegated to insignificant the 49 minutes and 59 seconds I was paying attention to him. He agreed it was the moment of disconnection and empathic lapse that mattered. The connected time didn't count. So you can see there, the 4 in that story is looking for evidence, because the self-image. I am special. I am sensitive. I adhere to elite standards. So in that circumstance, the 4 is seeing evidence. I am not special, and I have done something that is not adhering to elite standards by being with somebody who's glancing at the clock. And so it triggers this whole like error, like what have I done, right? And it puts them into bewilderment. So they're in common sense for the whole, 49 minutes. And then they go into bewilderment because something went against their confirmation bias. Something went against their belief system, and their identity starts to shoot up messages. And what's important here also is the 4 is one of the image types, right? The 2, 3, and 4 are image types. And so the fixation is on how do I appear to others, or maybe how do I appear to myself, because I am special, I am elite, all this stuff. It's like, it's about fixating on themselves. But if they're on a desert island and they're trying to find food, they're probably not going to have that fixation. It's probably going to come up more when they're around other people. When 4s complain that no one loves them, and you point out the love and affection that people have shown them, they reply, that doesn't count, it doesn't matter, so what? 4s maintain their maladaptive schemas by scanning for what is missing in themselves, their relationships, and their surroundings. Comparing themselves and others to their romantic fantasies reveals tragic flaws. I once heard Peggy Lee in person singing the 4's anthem. Is that all there is? Melancholy suffused the room. I experienced in that mood and those verses, and those verses, the sweet sadness that is the 4's emotional milieu. If that's all there is, then let's go on dancing. What is never quite enough, and so 4s seek to prolong the evening and avoid parting in the hope that what is missing will eventually show up. 4s may also maintain their maladaptive schemas by noticing that others seem to have what they are missing, and then they feel envious. Envy is, I think, the passion of the 4. Instead of relishing and being nourished by what they have, 4s look at what others possess and feel depressed. Okay, so it's this constant image, this constant comparison that is the addiction. And when that is entertained and it seems real, or it's made to be real, it's bought into, then suffering is a result. And so I want to keep reminding you how this applies to your storytelling as a type 4 is that bewilderment and common sense has to collapse into one, and then there cannot be a trigger around it. And so that's the healing benefit of the storytelling, if used correctly. So I'm going to read a little bit from Facets of Unity here, the Enneagram of Holy Ideas. The Holy Ideas are by A.H. Almas, are a cool approach on the Enneagram system because it's showing you specifically what the upside is of the 4 or any type losing their fixation. Here's essentially the holiness that comes out of that space. So the specific delusion of point 4 is the conviction in the concept of separate identity, that your I is ultimately separate, independent, different, and unique. This is the element of the ego that has to do with the feeling of identity, the sense of self, and it is the sense that your identity exists on its own, separately and independently from all other people and all things. Any type 4s take great pride in having an original, unique, and independent self, And this holy idea of point 4 is holy origin. So holy origin tells us that this is a delusion, since our true identity is the absolute itself, which is the center of everything. If you believe that you have an independent and separate source, then everyone must have their own absolute, which is, of course, impossible. Okay. I'm going to read a little bit from the Essential Enneagram. I really like this point here. The ultimate goal of the development of type 4, to realize that in the present moment we are loved and completely whole, lacking no essential quality or ingredient, that we are interconnected and at one with all life. Right? And so it's kind of saying the same thing as the last book, which is that separateness that is clinging to from the type 4 is actually what creates enviousness, right? If we don't have this insistence on the separateness, it's going to make enviousness obsolete. And so the enviousness comes on the bewilderment side of things, and then the elitism comes on the common sense side of things. And so the storytelling process of the type 4 is uprooting all of that separateness. It's uprooting that insistence on that elitist barrier. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit from this one last book here, the Enneagram Guide to Awakening. For the type 4, notice and own how important being fully understood by others is to you, and explore what that means for you. Observe the ways you try to make yourself understood by the people in your life, and check in with others to see if they work. Become more aware of the ways you communicate your emotions to people who do not relate to emotions in the same way that you do. Realize that you may need to educate people about how emotional you are and how much you need to feel understood. Explore your tendency to amp up your emotions or your emotional intensity in response to feeling misunderstood. Avoid using language that is too sophisticated or abstract or metaphoric, as it may prevent others from understanding you. Learn how to communicate more directly and simply. Several of the things that that's saying is, I find this interesting, is in that bewilderment, common sense, polarity schema, part of that means if what is common sense to you, if you stick to that, you stick to your vocabulary, you stick to your insistence on this is how emotions are expressed, other people are going to be bewildered by you, right? And so that means that even if you are in one aspect of that polarity, you're going to be throwing the world around you into the other aspect of that polarity. So that means also if you're in bewilderment, you need to have somebody in common sense to tell you what's what, right? So you're either surrounded by haters or you're surrounded by people who are teachers. And either way, you're not landing in the middle. And so the storytelling style for type 4 is creating a story that resolves the tension of throwing everything around you out of balance based on your own imbalance. Does that make sense? So yeah, I hope this has been helpful about type 4. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up with if you want more information on story weaving, check out the story weaving course on the story weaving website. And as well, there's the storytelling style quiz if you don't know your type yet, or if you want to have somebody who wants to take that. And then there's, of course, the story weaving book, which is also very helpful. Thanks so much for watching. This is Joshua, and see you in another video. Take care.